Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am here to talk about Garrett Armfield versus Brady Hiestand. My prediction for this fight is Garrett Armfield wins by decision. I think he's going to be able to keep this fight standing and he'll do better on the feet because he's the much more sharper and comfortable fighter. Brady Hiestand, though, he's better on the ground. If he's able to win the wrestling battle, he's going to win this fight. If he's able to win the wrestling battle in any fight, he's going to win that fight. The guy's a problem on top. And on the feet, he's limited and he definitely looks uncomfortable. He makes things work for him, but it's a little sloppy, especially as the fight goes on. But he has a bunch of great traits. Bunch of great traits. Heart, cardio, tenacity. I mean, just look to that last fight against Dana Bakhtiari, where he came back and forced a finish at the very end of that fight when he was down and when he was hurt. Speaking of which, he's been hurt in a bunch of his last fights. He was dropped by Dana Bakhtiari with a big left hook at the beginning of round two and beaten up elsewhere in that fight. He was dropped by Fernie Garcia early. I think the first punch he threw dropped Brady Hiestand, and Brady took over that fight again, took over that round within 10 seconds after that knockdown. But he still wasn't out of the woods completely. He still had to battle and fight hard down the stretch for that victory, securing a big takedown in the end. And against Ricky Tercios, that was an exhausting battle, but he was dropped by Ricky Tercios as well. Ricky caught him with a few right hands that put him on his ass in round three, I believe. And that was a fight that was one of the best fights of that year, the ultimate finale, a throwback to when the ultimate finale was the best fight of the year, regardless. But that was a great war against Ricky Tercios, and Ricky narrowly outpointed him. That's one of his two losses, the Ricky Tercios split decision on the ultimate finale, or in the ultimate finale. And his other loss comes to Chad Anheliger, who is a current UFC fighter. And Chad beat him by round three TKO. That was a fight that Brady, I believe, took on 2 weeks' notice. And of course, he was just 19 years old at the time. And Chad Anheliger is the last guy where you want to be taking a fight on short notice against him, because the guy is a walking comeback. He's one of those round three fighters, and he outlasted and took out Brady Hiestand. But that's been it. That's the only time he was finished as a pro. As an amateur, there was one fight where he was knocked out, apparently. I mean, it must have been a standing knockout because it took place in the first 30 seconds. But I haven't been able to see the fight, so I couldn't tell you what it looked like and whatever, how unconscious he was. But Brady has shown so many great traits at the UFC level, fighting this higher level of competition, because he doesn't have so many great wins outside the UFC. But inside the UFC, he definitely looks like he belongs. And you could say, yeah, he was about to lose the Dana Bakhtiari fight. He was, but those traits came through for him in a big way, and he got the finish. I should also mention he's got two of his best wins as exhibitions, where he TKO'd Vince Murdoch and he outpointed Josh Reddinghouse. Those are two solid fighters, and those fights took place on the Ultimate Fighter. So they're exhibition fights, but definitely the best, some of the best wins for Brady Hiestand. Garrett Armfield, he's got a record of 10-3. He's got 8 finishes in his 10 wins, 6 via knockout or TKO, 2 via submission, and 2 via decision. He's got 3 losses as well, 0 by knockout, 2 by submission, and 1 by decision. The 2 guys to submit him are David Onama in his UFC debut. David also beat him by decision as an amateur. But David was on a fresh camp, a full camp for that fight, and he was fighting Garrett Armfield, who took the fight on short notice and moved up in weight, and he was a little too much for Garrett. Got him out of there with an arm triangle choke in round 2, although Garrett did not tap. And his other loss comes to Mateo Alejandro Vogel, a guy who I mentioned in someone else's breakdown, for Timothy Kawamba. But Mateo Alejandro Vogel is a very good fighter, and he showed a lot of traits against Garrett in that fight because Garrett was really beating him up. And then Mateo got him down and just took his back and choked him out. He had like one small little window, one opportunity. He capitalized on it, and he was too much for Garrett. So I'm sure there were a lot of lessons that were learned in that fight, but it is one of his 3 losses, and the 2 times he's been finished have been by submission. And of course, he's fighting Brady Hiestand, so that is on the table as far as a potential finish goes. And his other loss was in his 3rd fight in the LFA to Ronnie Lawrence, former slash current UFC fighter. He's dealing with some infections and health issues. Hope the guy's all right. But the guy's a very good fighter, and he was too much for Garrett Armfield. Really mixing it up, taking it to him on the feet and on the ground, and he was too much for him. But Garrett has looked great since coming to the UFC. Of course, I had mentioned the Onama fight. There's a lot of circumstances that led to that. But since then, he's gone back down to his natural weight, and he's knocked out Toshiomi Kozama in round 1 and beat Brad Katona by decision, which is easily his best win. He doesn't have too many great wins, but that's his best. Brad Katona, 2-time Ultimate Fighter winner, and Garrett Armfield looked incredible in that fight, especially in the first 2 rounds. Round 3 slowed down a little bit, and Brad caught him. But early on, he looked really sharp and took it to Brad in the way that I thought Brad would be taking it to him. I thought Brad would have been the sharper striker, but it went the complete opposite way. And that's one of his 2 decision victories. So against his best competition, he can get it done, going the distance. His other decision victories over this guy, Mark Slider, it's a split decision, but that's bullshit. It should have been unanimous. He definitely won that fight. So I think this does come down to the takedown. I think Garrett has a lot more to offer Brady on the feet. I mean, Brady can work and make things work for him, striking in slower combinations, but everything Garrett does is sharper. He can snap those kicks to your head much more quickly than Brady Hiestand can, and the same goes for his hands. They're much quicker than Brady, and especially over the course of 15 minutes, they'll do better work. And that's what I'm picking to happen. I'm picking Garrett Armfield to win by decision. I'm picking him to keep Brady Hiestand's grappling to a minimum. I do think Brady is going to get in on him. Brady's a really good takedown artist. But Garrett, I think, is a little more well-rounded of a fighter. So if he can handle Brady, keep him standing, I think he eventually takes over this fight and really starts to beat him up. But as for a finish, I'd be surprised if Garrett got a finish or if Brady got a finish, to be honest. But I'd be more surprised if Garrett got a finish because I think Brady's a little better on the ground than Garrett is. And on the feet, even though Garrett is better than Brady, Brady's got a lot of great traits that have been on full display. So despite the early knockout as an amateur and the late TKO as a pro to Chad and Helliger, I think Brady would be able to survive anything coming at him from Garrett Armfield. So I'll wait for the over-under as well because I do want to see what the over looks like and where the line is set. But right now, with just the money line staring at me, I bet on Garrett Armfield. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.